All right, well, welcome. We're a minute past our starting time, but this is the 2023 Cordillera Metro District Candidate Forum for this year. We have 2 open board seats and 5 candidates. Today in the room with myself and Cheryl Foley, our board president, and Ron Robbins. Welcome back. Thank you for agreeing to do this. So we will kick off with Ron.
You need to open.
Yep. So Ron, after we open the meeting, we'll go through all the rules and the regulations, but first we should open this meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to open this meeting of the Cordillera Metro District and call it to order. I believe we have a quorum and I would like to know if there's any disclosures or conflicts to report. If not, hearing none, I would like to welcome everybody to our candidate forum. Thank you so much for your attendance today. And I am going to, let's see, I guess I need a motion to
approve the agenda when the agenda item
approve
is
the agenda. And
yeah.
Okay, so could I have a motion and a second, please, to approve the agenda?
A motion to begin.
Sorry, Brooke, from Richard or Harry, Jasper.
I'll move. So move.
Harry, do you have a second, please?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right, meeting is called to order and I am going to go into the back of the room and listen from back there. Thank you. And also could at least 2 of the directors stay until the very end so that we can close it out. Otherwise, I'm going to be sitting here by myself all evening.
I'll close it out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, again, welcome, and Ron, thank you for agreeing to do this year. I'll let you go through the rules and regulations, the rules, I should say. Paula Kurtz is in the room with us as well as doing the timing, and take it away.
All right, thank you. So thank you, everybody, for inviting me back here. Let me just very quickly go through the rules and then a couple of quick things I want to add. There will be no opening statements this time in the forum. We'll simply ask each candidate to identify themselves by name and address within the community. The audience will be recognized by the virtual raising of hands, and each questioner will have 30 seconds to ask their question. The candidates will then each have 2 minutes to answer the question. If a question is directed to a specific candidate, that candidate will go first and the other candidates will follow in a random order that we've pre-selected. It's simply drawing numbers out of a hat. If there is not a question directed specifically to a candidate, we'll just follow the random order. The closing statements will be limited to 1 minute per candidate. The other thing I just want to go through real quickly is I tend to be fairly informal. So unless anybody objects to it, I'll call the candidates by their first names rather than their last names. If anybody objects to that, please stop me and I'll be a little more formal with this. My understanding is that Terrence Boyle prefers to be called Terry. So I Terrence Terry. Ellen Alexander, I'll refer to as Ellen. Brooke Ferris, I'll refer to as Brooke. And we have 2 Davids, David Luya and David Bentley. I'll refer to them respectively as David L and David B. If there's no objections to me proceeding that way, let's get on with questions.
Okay, so we have quite a few people raise their hands. Right now I have 6 in order. Yes, sorry. Opening statements are not allowed today, but we'll have each candidate starting with, I'll go through the order here today. Terrence, you are first. Ellen, you are second. David L, third. Brooke, fourth. David B, fifth. And we will prompt you, but Terrence, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Terry Boyle, and only my mother actually calls me Terrence. But that is my name. I live at 283 Elk Spring Trail up in the ranch.
And Ellen, you're second.
Yes, Ellen Alexander. I live at 122 West Timber Draw in the ranch and have been in Cordillera since 2019.
David L.
David Lilia. I live at 292 Red Draw in the ranch. Been a homeowner since 2020.
Brooke, you're next.
I am Brooke Ferris. I live in the Divide, Kensington, 67 Hawksleep Road.
And David B., last but not least.
Sure, I'm David Bentley. I live at 123 Peregrine on the ranch side, and I've lived here since 2006.
Okay, thank you all. So despite me articulating the rules, the first thing I did was not abide by the rules, but now we'll try and go in order. So we do have the first question now.
Yeah, Hiram Patel, please go ahead.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Hiram Patel. Carrie and I have lived in Cordillera since 2020. My understanding is that for several years prior to 2021, the CMD didn't receive a clean financial audit. And I believe it was this issue that led to the engagement of an outside management company. I believe of all the issues that this board will deal with, financials may be the most critical. And I have no interest in a board member who tolerates poor accounting. My understanding is that Mr. Bentley was the CMD president during this.
Hiram, if you'll pardon me, we're trying to limit the questions to 30 seconds. We're already on that. So if
Okay, let me just ask the question. So to all the other candidates, please discuss briefly your qualifications for monitoring CMD's accounting and your views on CMD's current outsourcing. And to Mr. Bentley, I'd be interested in hearing your explanation for why those audits weren't clean during your tenure and what would be different if you return to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start the question or the answers with Terry.
Fiscal responsibility is essential, particularly when we've got this fairly complex organization, a quasi-governmental body. We have to give great thanks to the current board members, particularly Cheryl and Richard and former member Dan Roberts, for bringing financial accounting up to standard within the CMD. It is essential. It's impossible to manage any sort of business without it. And if it's a high priority for me, I started my career with Arthur Anderson, and a lot of what I've done in the legal field has been financial related.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. And by the way, I know it's hard to keep track of time. As the candidates get close to 2 minutes, maybe 10 seconds up, I'll raise my hand if you're getting close. So be looking for that. Ellen, you're next. Thank you.
Yes, my background is in finance and management, and it is impossible to manage any organization without good accounting books. And typically, most board members are not accountants, and therefore you should be with a third-party accounting firm. And it avoids the liability of the board getting involved in areas that they're not an expert in. So I'm all for outside accounting.
Thank you, David L.
I have spent my entire career building private and public companies. And the number one thing that relates to success or failure in any one of these is fiscal responsibility. Clean audits are a must. And if you can't have a clean audit, I don't understand that. Something else needs to be happening. But at the end of the day, without good financials, without good budgeting, without good planning, nothing matters. And we need, moving forward, it's more imperative than ever to make sure that we continue to have good, clean audits, good, clean financials, and good, solid budgeting.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Brooke, you've got your mute on.
Yes, I'm sorry. I could not hear the exact question. Would you be able to just paraphrase in 5 words what was the question we were asked?
I'm going to ask Hiram if he would articulate it. I don't want to misquote him.
Sure. So please discuss your qualifications for monitoring CMD's accounting and your views on CMD's current outsourcing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My qualification, well, we all have so many, I certainly can't go over it in 2 minutes. I would say my most important qualification is being an active and successful real estate broker here in the Vail Valley for 21 years. As far as the financial side, I think it's very important that we have independent accounting and clear budgets, and that we are totally open to all of our Cordillera property owners for any questions or suggestions they might have for better financial dealings.
Okay, thank you. David B.
Sure. I was president of the Metro District from 2018 to 2022. Cheryl was the treasurer. We did have clean audits. There was controversy about how the finances were divided up between the CMD and the CPOA. And when Cheryl got on the board, one of the first things that she tried to do, and I think it was, she was encouraged by Monty Arian, to try and find all-in costs for the various elements that were involved in our organization. And we had a general manager at the time, and we unfortunately had a carousel of financial managers. And Cheryl worked tirelessly with that group to sort out issues that had come up, and they certainly were not clear at the time, but it was something that we worked on continuously all the way up until we hired CLA, and I was part of that process too. I was on the board, I was president of the board, and of course I voted for CLA. And I think we're on the right track now. But again, those audits were clean. It was a matter of opinion on from some members of the community that there were not clear lines between CMD responsibilities and CPOA responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next question comes from Tom and Nancy. Please unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you.
Yes, it's Nancy here. Tom and I've lived in Cordillera since 1999, and this question's for David Bentley. In July 2021, CPOA had a deal supported by 77% of the community to buy the grouse on the green as a clubhouse for Cordillera short course. In August 2021, as CMD president, you killed the deal by campaigning to turn the grouse into a public pub and passed a CMD board resolution to that effect. APN was opposed to a public pub opposite their rehab facility, so they pulled the deal. You ignored the community will and cost the divide and all Cordillera property owners a key amenity. David, convince me that you will honor the will of the community in the future and not interfere in CPOA initiatives.
And before I have David B answer, again, I'll please ask people asking their questions to try and limit it to 30 seconds. David, you're up first.
Sure. You're absolutely right on the timing on that. What's missing is that and I'm sure you remember there was a big controversy about the water fund, and we had $2.2 million that was being discussed around the community as though we could give it to the CPOA, and of course we could not do that. That was illegal. So there was public funds that we could not give to a private corporation. We spent a lot of money trying to find a way around that limitation, and when the grouse deal came up, by the way, I voted for that and I supported 100%. We thought that this would be a way to help the community to take care of two issues. Yes, we did want to have a pub because that was our thought at the time, that the community sentiment was to have a pub. But the offer and the resolution that we made in July required the CPOA's acceptance of it. I had tried to meet with Mike Greer on a number of occasions. We had one meeting about another topic, and at the end of the meeting, it turned into the pub discussion. He did not want to have a pub. I understand that. And they simply would be able to say to the sellers of the property that they were going to proceed with the vote as it was structured. Did not have, there was no obligation for them to accept it. And as a matter of fact, they never acknowledged our resolution, never turned it down one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Ellen, please.
Ellen, are you there? Let's see her again.
I think she's muted.
Ellen, if you can hear us, unmute yourself. Oh, no, it's not. Uh-oh.
All right, I'm going to presume that Ellen might have lost her signal. I'll come back to her when she rejoins us, but let's have David L. with his response.
Since the question was directly at David Bentley, I just want to reiterate the fact that I voted for the grouse, just as David did. But I think it's imperative that moving forward, we figure out if something like this presents itself again to add a tremendous asset to our community, that between the CMD and the CPOA, that there becomes a solid planning path forward to close it. I was disappointed that it did not close. And looking back, it's easier to say we should have done X, Y, Z differently, but it didn't. And now we're faced with trying to figure out the future of this.
Thank you. I don't see that Ellen has rejoined us, so I'm going to go on to Brooke, please. Brooke, are you there?
I'm sorry, your microphone is not clear. Your voices are not 100% clear. Question about the grouse. Yes, I would like us to be able to purchase and own the grouse. If you would like it to be done by a real estate broker, I volunteer my services free of charge. One question that was directed to David, would he, I can't remember the exact words, stand in the way? I can't imagine that any of us would. I think more and more we're realizing the importance of democracy, meaning the importance of the majority votes of our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I still don't see that Ellen joined us, so I'm going to go on to Terry, please.
Unfortunately, I think with the community resoundingly was in favor of acquiring grouse. This is a perfect example of the CMD not sticking to its lane. It should have not been involved in any way. The CPOA was negotiating the acquisition of that property. They should have been left to do it without any interference. And I can recall a board meeting that went on and on and on and on, that David Bentley was making a demand that there be liquor served at the grouse. Now, when you're dealing with an addiction center, that's probably not a good tack if you want to accomplish the acquisition. So again, you have to listen to the community, understand what the CMD is supposed to be doing. It's not supposed to be out there trying to acquire property. So why was it there?
Thank you. Again, I don't see that Ellen has joined us, so let's move on to the next questioner. And
next question is Dan Roberts. Hello, Dan.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Dan Roberts. Jane and I have lived in Cordillera since 2006. In 2017, as a CMD director, candidate Bentley voted to build a $30 to $40 million community center financed by additional Cordillera bond debt, which, in my opinion, would likely have been rated junk and in need of additional support. If not for a community revolt, today Cordillera would be paying much higher taxes and would have little financial capacity for an emergency. I know how David feels about issuing more Cordillera debt. How do the other candidates feel about issuing more debt?
thank you. We'll start with David L., please.
That's a hot topic, especially these days because debt is very expensive. There's a right way and a wrong way for debt use in any facility, any application, and any business, whether it be personal or business or a district of this matter. To just go out and issue debt for the sake of just building things or doing things without a plan, I'm strongly against. I was very concerned about our community in general with the amount of debt that we have taken on the last few years with a lot of different projects. I'm excited to see that now Cordillera Metro District is debt-free. And moving forward, I would hope that we could balance a budget and stay debt-free and have some good solid planning so we don't need to go to the trough of raising money, whether it be through bonds, loans, whatever it might be.
Thank you, David. Brooke, and you are on mute again.
All right, yes. Yes, we have paid off the bonds. I think that's very good. Our taxes will go down. I do not feel that we should take on additional debt.
Okay, thank you. David B.
Sure, this is the 2023 election, not the 2018 election. I just want to clear that up because that was the big topic in 2018, the community center and all that. Community center was started by an initiative by a CMD director at the time, David Davis, and at that time, all 10 board members and the CMD and the CPOA met together. And we came up with this, he came up with this idea that of a community center and how could we finance it if we were to do something like that? It wasn't 30 to 40 million, it was 20 to 25 million, but it doesn't matter. It was a lot of money. And the idea was that if we did it with bonds, that future users of the facility would be paying for it. And the bond rate at that time, Dan, was 2% maybe. And and so that was the idea. We had stagnated in Cordillera. The price of a house in 2017 was probably less than what it was in 2007. And we were looking for all kinds of ways to re-energize the community, particularly to build on property values. And we wanted to introduce this to the community, but Dan, you and Jane, your wife, were very proactive in, I'll say, stirring the pot before we ever got a chance to introduce it properly to the community. And so we dropped it right away as soon as we could see that there was no momentum to support this. So we discontinued the thing. I got 7 more seconds there, Ron. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And that's exactly the intent, is to let you know you have a little time left. Terry, you're up. Thank you.
The fact that even it was debt at that level was contemplated, given the fact that there was existing debt at the time, shows a complete lack of fiscal responsibility, in my view. The CMD has a finite resource as far as revenue is concerned. And that needs to be understood, that there are not unlimited funds. And I can remember attending a board meeting when this topic was brought up. It wasn't, David was president at that time. I don't think he was the one who said it, but it was the treasurer of the CMD. And his words were to the effect that it's not going to cost us anything. We're going to finance it with bonds. Well, great. And as Dan Roberts, who was in the bond business, pointed out, there's already a significant amount of bonds outstanding. You add those to them, and the classification, the rating of those bonds changes, and the price goes up. So it gets to be very expensive. The debt at the CMD, thanks to Dan Roberts and the current board at the CMD, has been paid off. Our taxes have gone down between $2,000 and $3,000 per home. That's where it should be. Debt should only be used in the case of a dire emergency. That's what it's there for. And it is a very cumbersome process. You can't just go out and borrow money and say, okay, we need it, so we're going to go out and borrow money. There is a long runway to get approval, and it requires voter approval before the CMD can move forward with debt. Any debt over 365 days needs voter approval. So bottom line, not in favor of any additional debt.
Thank you, Terry. I see that Ellen has still not rejoined us, so we'll move on to the next questioner, please.
Oh, man.
We've been emailing and texting just to see what is going on, just for those that are wondering. I have not heard a response, so we'll keep trying here. All right, next question is Joel K, please. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joel Kay. I have lived in Cordillera for 23 years and was on the first CMD board run by the property owners. This question is for David Bentley. Cordillera has finally paid off our bond debt, and the CPOA has updated the athletic center and trailhead without debt. In your election bio, you propose employee housing, which was voted down by the CMD board last year, and a ski shuttle service, which has been underutilized every time it has been tried. The CMD has a budget deficit. Will you increase taxes or cut services to pay for your projects? Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. David B.
Sure. I'll start my clock. The ski shuttle, of course, was it didn't have great ridership when the lodge ran it, but it was a very popular amenity for the few months that we ran it before COVID shut it down. And it was paid in essence by the CMD by discounting the services agreement. So the CPOA said, well, we will run the shuttle, but we don't want to pay for it. So the CMD stepped in and said, okay, well, if we discount this $50,000 cost, would you run it? And they did. The idea that to have a ski shuttle or any other amenity has to be shown to be cost efficient or even affordable. As Terry has mentioned, the CMD is fixed income. We can only operate on taxes. And the CPOA is unlimited income because they can raise the dues to whatever they think is appropriate. But together, the CMD and the CPOA pay the overhead cost to a homeowner of what it takes to live in this great community. And I think that we should cooperate a lot more than the CPOA has been willing to do of late to I certainly don't suggest in any way that the CMD should incur more debt. And the CPOA is in fact going to incur some short-term debt to finish their project.
Okay. Thank you, Brooke.
Well, sorry, Brooke, 1 second. We may have to, Ellen's internet crashed. She's on my cell phone. So we're going to try a speaker on my cell phone to this. I just want to let you know. So Brooke will have you answer the question, and then when Ellen's time is up, we'll see if this works. I apologize.
Yes.
Her internet crashed. Okay.
Well, Joel, wasn't your first part of the question about employee housing?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so I will address employee housing first. I'm against it. I know there's been talk of doing some investigation to see if it would be beneficial to the community. I don't think it has any benefit or need for the Cordillera community. As it is, we have excellent, very qualified staff members, employees. I just think employee housing would create so many legal problems, financial cost. So for that question, my answer is please, let's not do this. The ski shuttle, of course, the idea of basically advertising Cordillera by having a ski shuttle drive around our ski areas. However, is it cost effective? I wimped out. I stopped skiing several years ago. I never used the shuttle, but I understand it really wasn't used enough to be cost effective. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you. Terry? Terry, you've got your mute on?
No,
Terry, you have your mute button on?
Terry, I also clicked the button.
Okay, thanks. I can't find my name up on the screen. There's so many names.
So you've been on mute the entire time, so rewind.
Okay. Let's talk about employee housing first. I do think let's let the experts build employee housing. We have no expertise at all in building employee housing. Again, let's stay in our lane. Let's do things that we are required to do, and hopefully we do very well. All one has to do is drive by employee housing at Beaver Creek, and on many nights a week, there are policemen there with their lights flashing. It is a morass. It is liability writ large. So let's stay out of the employee housing business. If the purpose is because we can't attract the right level and competency of employees, we need to pay them more. We don't need to build employee housing. As far as the shuttle is concerned, a CMD cannot run a shuttle by law. It can't run a shuttle. It might be able to do it by a sleight of hand, but it's not allowed to run a shuttle. And as far as marketing is concerned, do we need more marketing for Cordillera, given that the housing prices that are going on right now? I think we've solved that problem the right way, which is having an extremely desirable area at reasonable, by some standards, costs. That's what drives sales and drives values. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And again, we lost Ellen because her internet crashed. We're going to try this experiment to patch her in. So Ellen is up next.
They are actually getting her on the phone. So if we can go to David L.
Okay, let's go to David L. and we'll circle back to Ellen.
I actually didn't hear the part of the employee housing question in that question, but I will address it since it's been brought up. I do not think that it's in CMD's best interest to be in the housing market, housing business of employees, housing, etc. I don't think we should be building anything of the sorts, nor should we even consider it. Now, it's something that always could be readdressed, but at this given time, I don't think there's any reason. I don't think we should do it based on time, effort, and money. And I don't think it's going to provide that much better of a benefit than what we already currently have in a lot of fantastic employees that work for the Metro District. On the ski shuttle, I am actually a proponent of the ski shuttle, but I'm also a proponent of, I do not think that CMD at any level should burden the cost. This is something that needs to be addressed through the HOA, the CPOA, and the CMD. So if the shuttle does get reintroduced and somebody would like, and this moves forward, the CMD cannot burden the cost of it. It needs to be shared within the community.
Okay, thank you. Ellen, you're up next, and I wonder if you heard the question you're answering at this point.
Ellen, can you hear us?
Finally, I'm sorry about that. The internet went down in Castle Pines.
That is okay. Did you hear the question by chance?
No, I just got on.
All right, so I'll ask Joel if you would please to repeat the question.
Joel, are you still on?
Yes, I am. Do you want me to repeat the whole question or just the?
Yeah, would you summarize it, please?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Joe.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Go ahead, Joel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Joel.
Yes, okay. Question is, do we need to go through, do we need a ski shuttle, which has been underutilized in the past, or employee housing, which was voted down by the board last year? And if you're in favor of either one, will you be increasing taxes to do it or cutting services to pay for it?
I'm not in agreement with either one. I think the ski shuttle was underutilized. And I think there are other ways to solve employee housing problems that deal with salary, housing stipend, sign-on bonus, but not owning employee housing. So that's no for both.
Okay, thank you. And we'll have our next questioner, please.
Okay, Chuck Jackson, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me, Trevor?
Yes, we can, Chuck. Go ahead.
This is for candidate Bentley. In 2021, you rejected the proposal of CMD board members Foley and Roberts to return the $2.2 million water fund to Cordillera taxpayers, which, by the way, was collected by Eagle River, not by the CMD, or to use a portion for CPOA's amenities program. Foley and Roberts wrote that they were, quote, beyond frustrated at your animosity towards CPOA initiatives, close quote. Your candidate bio now states, quote, the failure of CPOA to pay their fair share of public safety is deplorable. Your language. How does your continued hostility towards CPOA help community dialogue or comply with both boards' civility policies?
Thank you. David B.
Yeah, well, Chuck, as you well know, because you were there with the attorney that we paid over $20,000 for, that we were unable, illegal. We were not permitted to give those funds that were collected by the Eagle River Water and transferred right away to the Metro District. And once they became the possession of the Metro District, they were public funds. And you know well, and I don't know why you're bringing this question up again, but you know very well that we were unable and it was illegal to transfer that to CPOA amenities. Now, on the public safety, on the public safety issue, the CPOA has responsibilities for covenant enforcement and just in general safety of the community. I would think it would be paramount that the CPOA would be willing to share that burden that benefits everybody in the community. I do think it's deplorable that you will no longer consider sharing that burden as the CPOA has done for 20 some years. So I see this question as being sort of hostile in and of itself. You knew the answer to the water fund. You knew that we could not do it. Our hands were tied. We tried another way, a workaround to give that money back to the CPOA through contributing to the purchase of the grouse. And that was, it's also been twisted around to say that we were trying to kill the grouse deal. It couldn't be further from the truth. We wanted to help the grouse deal and not force people to pay $3,000 in assessments.
Can you answer my question about your language?
Thank you. We've had the question and the answer. Terry is up next, please.
You know, the water fund is a good example. And legal opinions oftentimes are shaped by the questions that are asked. And oftentimes the answers are suggested before the legal opinion is asked for. I'm not suggesting that that's what David did, but common sense would tell us that if I go to you and say, we're going to need $500 from you because of this upcoming bill for this water processing center that we are going to need to build. You give me the $500. It then turns out later that we don't need to spend that money because of the good work that's been done by, in this case, Cheryl Foley, determining that it wasn't an obligation of Cordillera. In fact, it was Eagle River's obligation. At that point, you have funds that don't belong to you. They get turned back to the CMD. Common sense would dictate that those funds belong to the people in the community, the people that paid them. And that's where that should go. And if there's any doubt about it, you go to the community and you ask them, what should we do with these funds? They're not ours. You paid them in. What should we do? Wasn't done here. Should have been done here.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Ellen?
Without talking too much on that point, I totally agree with Terrence. I think that I don't know all the ins and outs, but I've heard the arguments since then, and I think we should have at least asked the community, what do you want done with those funds? They paid in, and we did spend them for the benefit of the community on capital improvements, et cetera. But it seemed to outsiders, i.e. homeowners looking in, that nobody was consulted about it. That's all I'm going to say on that subject.
Thank you, Ellen. David L., please.
Well, I guess I'm a little thrown back, and this is one of the reasons I'm running for the CMD board district, is there seems to be in these questions a lot of hostility. And I really feel that this community is just becoming more and more divided and more hostile towards each other. And I'd like to start by trying to take this a different direction. I remember everything that went down with the water fund, everything that was debated. I sat in meetings online and listened to it. At the end of the day, the money was returned to the community. The position of, sometimes things have to go through a course of actions in order to come to a result. And whatever that course had to take to get there, it got there. And that's ultimately what happened here. So I don't really understand the question and why the position of the question. That's what I got.
Thank you, David. Brooke, please.
Chuck, let's see. So we have three topics here. Public safety. I'm an advocate of increased public safety. I would suggest that the CMD and the CPOA have a meeting together, open by Zoom to the Cordillera public, and clarification who is responsible for public safety, how we can work this out so that we have, in my opinion, even more control and public safety that we have. Hostility, well, unfortunately, that word seems to be addressed to David Bentley, who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting personally, and David L. mentioned hostility. I have no hostility towards anybody, and I greatly appreciate the CMD members and the CPOA for all their work. And I've been coming to Cordillera for 21 years due to the Equestrian Center. Before my husband and I bought a house here, I don't sense hostility. I'm sensing more of a sense of harmony than ever. So the water fund, I don't really know enough about the water fund to make intelligent comments. I believe one of you mentioned it had been returned. I don't think the water fund has been returned to the people who contributed to that. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Brooke. Our next question, please.
All right. Bob Donovan, if you unmute yourself and ask your question.
Trevor, a comment first. My question is for David L., but I don't think the board will do the community a favor by moving forward without giving David Bentley.
To ask you, please, Bob, to articulate a question.
David Robert, I am, okay? I think we need to have David Bentley talk about his proposal for employee housing. It's too important for the community. My question to David L. David, on February 27th, you, your wife, and I were on the CPOA Community Forum on Cordillera's rental registration and licensing regulations, which were mentioned at least 3 times during the course of that 2-hour call. I note that your house is still on VRBO without a Cordillera license. How can you run for the CMD board as a viable candidate when you are ignoring Cordillera's existing regulations? As a prospective future board member, shouldn't you be held to a higher standard? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. David L.
Bob, thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Yes, my house is listed on VRBO, and no, I have not registered my house with the licensing committee. As it was expressed to the licensing committee, we have a decision coming up here in a couple days. And I did not see the need to go spend the $500 registration fee for everything just to get revoked in a few days, if that so happens. So I was holding off until the decision was made on on what direction the community was going as a whole regarding short-term rentals.
Okay, thank you, David. Terry?
Well, you know, I think the rules are the rules. I mean, if there's a requirement that you have to register your home in order to have it available for short-term rentals or whatever term rentals, I think you've got to follow those rules.
Okay, thank you. Ellen, are you still with us?
I'm still with you, fingers crossed. No, I think that there's both sides are probably correct. At the 31st, if this passes, then David and his family will have to register the house. But I anticipate it's going to pass. And so I don't think there's any fear of that it's going to get revoked, David. So David L. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. Brooke, please.
I do think that the rules are to be followed when the rules are in effect. I don't feel that an individual, with all due respect, David L., I'm sorry, I don't know you either personally. I don't feel as an individual, you're allowed to delay the rules until it's convenient for you. If there are rules that you don't agree with, then I do think it's good to speak up and explain why you don't agree, and perhaps they can be modified. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. David B., please.
Sure. I don't know the circumstances from listening to David L. about does he have a pending rental in place? But I think if he does have a pending rental in place, that he obviously has to get licensed because those are the rules. I do want to address Bob Donovan. The employee housing issue, it was blown out of proportion at the CMD meeting by Dan Roberts, and it's being blown out of proportion now. What I asked Trevor to do, and I discussed this with Trevor and beforehand, that would it be helpful if we had employee housing units somewhere available to some of our some of our employees, as well as the club also having a need for housing. I talked with Mike Henritzi about it. He was also very concerned about having some housing available. We bantered around the idea of a public-private partnership. Would that be possible? It was never to spend any of the CMD's money. The CMD cannot do this, but we could participate in a partnership and possibly offer some land. If that would be a benefit to the club, our most important amenity of all, and to the CMD itself. Right now, we have employees staying in the maintenance facility some nights. Isn't that right, Trevor? So let's put that into perspective. I never said we should build an employee housing unit. That was never even suggested. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our next question, please.
All right, Lainey Edinburgh, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Lainey.
Lainey, go ahead.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Lainey Edinburgh. My husband and I have lived here full-time for close to 23 years. This question is also for David Bentley. In June of 2021, when you were the president of the CMD, I submitted a draft proposal for the fairest and most reasonable disposition of the $2.2 million water fund before that segregated fund went into the general fund of the CMD, which would have been a refund of approximately $3,500 to each Cordillera property owner that had been incorrectly charged extra funds by the Eagle River Water Department. I discussed my proposal at the August 12, 2021 CMD board meeting. What?
Can I ask you to please call the question here?
No, I need to finish, Ron. It's important. This is our community. I need to finish.
You have a
So-
30-second rule. 30-second rule. So
I need to finish. So that afternoon at the meet and greet at the trailhead, David came up to me and said, you thought my proposal was excellent and I needed to make it happen. My response to you was, David, you are the president of the CMD and you need to make it happen. Why didn't you ever follow through with that fair proposal by returning the water fund monies to their rightful owners?
I'll ask David to answer the question, but I'll please ask the questioner to please be respectful of everybody else's time and limit their questions to 30 seconds. David?
Is this for me, so I can go ahead?
Yes.
Okay, so Lainey's absolutely right. I thought her solution sounded very reasonable. The fact of the matter was, as we had been advised by an attorney, and both attorneys, both Alan Pogue and Kim Setter, a longtime expert in the field, that we were limited on how we could disperse these funds. It was the same situation as giving it to the CPOA. We just couldn't do it. And yes, I agreed with Lainey. That sounded very reasonable. And I also would think that Gene McGuire kept talking about, can we just refund each individual payer? And the problem was, it's a very practical, logistical problem. A lot of our homes have changed hands. They're owned by LLCs, owned by heirs. The logistical problem of tracking down each one of those payments over the course of all those years was just impractical and couldn't be done. And so, yes, I did like Lainey's solution, but it wasn't able to be done.
Okay, thank you, David. Ellen, please.
I think I already made my position on this, and I really wasn't here to hear all the background on it, so it's enlightening hearing it today. But I do understand how it would be difficult to track prior homeowners down. But in that case, this is just my thought, the people you couldn't track down, you could put the money in a reserve and keep trying for a period of time, and then tell the community we can't track them. And here's what we're planning to do, A, B, C, and what's your opinion on it? As opposed to just making a decision to not do it.
Thank you, Ellen.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, that's fine.
All right, thank you. David Ellen?
The water fund is obviously a hot topic today.
Yeah.
As you know, as Mr. Bentley mentioned, is he went under the advisement and took the direction between the attorneys, and that is what ultimately ended up happening. The advisement of a community cannot dictate what is legally proper and what has to happen through a course of action. So my answer doesn't change from anything from before. I stick with the same thing, that the water fund is a hot topic. I got nothing else to really say about the water fund.
Please. Brooke,
Go ahead.
Brooke, your turn.
All right. I agree with Lainey's suggestion years ago that the money from the water fund be returned to those who contributed to it. As far as David Bentley mentioned, those who had already sold their houses and moved on or through inheritance, then those people simply, if they could not be located quickly, cost effectively, unfortunately would not get their money back. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Terry, please.
Just because it's complicated doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. There was clearly, these kinds of issues come up frequently. There certainly was a way to handle this. And again, the common sense approach is it's not CMD's money. It never was CMD's money. It belongs to other people, and CMD has the obligation, even though it's going to take some effort, to get those funds back out to the proper people that contributed them, or to the property owners, the new property owners. There are several ways that that could have been done. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Let's go on to the next question, please.
Okay, so Hiram, I see your hands up again, but I need to get to others that haven't asked a question, or maybe it's up by accident, but Susie Cunningham, you are up in order, and please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, hello. So I'm so sick of the politics of the Cordillera boards. I'm tired of ex-lawyers running the show in their dictatorship format, who appear to lack knowledge of running a business, who also promote cancel culture in a non-transparent environment. I should know. I would like to know, what management attributes would you bring to the table, and would you be willing to sign a pledge that you will not vote to grand manorize the CMD, which I believe is the goal of the CPOA, as I believe they continue to bring their candidates to the CMD platform using their 70 plus or minus supporters to campaign for them. I understand also.
Susie, can you please complete the question? Thank you.
Yeah, I did. I asked 2 questions.
All right, thank you. First up is David L. And again, I'm going to ask the questioners to please respect the 30-second time limit. David L., you're first.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think I want to bring a voice of reason. I want to bring a voice of calm and a voice of heading in what I would consider of a new direction to make sure there isn't these hostile environments that I've mentioned earlier. To me, it's ever most imperative that we start bringing people within the community, not just the same, and trying to just go the same direction. I think we need to kind of have a reset. And I think we need to look at everything as whole, as a district, as a community, and really push for some, I don't want to use the words continuity, but really to bring everything kind of back together. I've dealt with all kinds of issues management wise in my life. I've taken over companies, I've restructured companies. And the one thing that I've learned through all the processes is you have to be able to listen. Listen to your fellow board members, listen to the community, and truly go in the direction that they are wanting, not what you think the direction is, no matter what policies are in place.
Thank you, David. Brooke, please.
Let's see, managerial experience, Susie. Well, I have my own real estate company, very successful. I was the president of a homeowners association for 8 years. They wouldn't let me leave, but I finally left, managed to leave. Yes, I would pledge to not vote to grand manorize the CMD, not just not to ask grand manners to work for us, but I do not like the impersonalization of turning over our accounts and our activities to a large entity. I prefer to maintain some independence. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Brooke. David B., please.
I don't think that there's any case to be made for Grand Manners to take over CMD's operations. It doesn't fit their business model. I think that Grand Manners is a contract, and the contract could, it's up for renewal, I think, in a year or so. It could be another company that serves the same purposes. I think that the CMD structure with Trevor leading a very slimmed down operation has proved itself to be extremely efficient. And I think it would be really hard pressed for anybody from the outside to come in and duplicate what he's been able to do as efficiently as it is. I mean, I think that the standards that he has set, I think there's no way that we are going to go back to the way it was in 2019 with the CMD running both operations. That ship has sailed, and I think that there are some real advantages that have emerged from that. The CPOA has a wonderful general manager, Crystal Wilson. She obviously is working well with Trevor. That was an extremely difficult position to place a general manager in to having to deal with both entities. So that's a win right there. So I think that the track we are on now is the track of the future, and I'm very happy with it.
Thank you, David. Terry, please.
We are in a great position right now as far as boards and management. We have really come a long way. And David L., there has been a reset. The tone is entirely different than it was a year ago. It's amazing to me. And it's, I know the people on both boards, and I think they all are operating in good faith. And it should be easy for the two boards to negotiate any sort of difference because they are operating in good faith. I think we're there. And the goal now is to make sure we stay there and we progress, but keep the same basic slim down management. And we have to keep, particularly on the CMD, we have a very limited amount. It's a large amount, but it's limited, it's finite. And we have to make sure that the expenses that we're incurring match those revenues. That's the key. And we've got the people with the experience and the expertise to do it. As far as my expertise is concerned, I have been chief financial officer of small businesses, but mostly what I've done is practice law. And I've done that for almost 50 years. And in that facility, I have engaged with boards, I've represented boards, I've represented metro districts. So that's the expertise that I can bring to the table should I be elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Ellen, please.
Yes, I think our staff today is doing an excellent job. And I would be opposed to having a third-party property management firm come in and they'd report to them. It's unnecessary, and I think it would be demoralizing. I see no reason for it. We're lucky to have the employees that we do, both sides. And I also think that my background has always been in project finance, underwriting, pro formas, revenues, expenses, managing actually nuts and bolts of that as it relates to real estate. And so if there are any problems, I'm sure we can work them out between all the parties, staff and the CPOA board, our board. So I'm looking forward to that, actually. That's it.
Thank you, Ellen. I hope people will appreciate that I'm trying to keep the program on track. I'm not trying to discipline anybody, but if people would try and be respectful to that 30-second time limit, we understand the passion, but please try and just articulate, excuse me, articulate your question. We're up next.
Okay, Grant Cunningham, you are up. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you and good afternoon. Cordillera for years has clouds around it due to lawsuits. Have any of the current candidates been involved in any of the past lawsuits? And if so, what capacity? And then what would you do tactically or operationally to keep us out of these scenarios going forward?
Thank you, Grant. Brooke, you're first, please.
Well, I am an attorney, but not a practicing one. I studied in Venezuela, not the United States. I have not been involved in any lawsuits as an attorney or representative or a victim. What would I do to avoid lawsuits? Well, the only people who benefit in a lawsuit are the attorneys because they make so much money. So I do believe in communication and perhaps clarity to avoid unnecessary lawsuits. I hope that answers Grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. David B., please.
Well, yeah, I have unfortunately have a lot of experience with lawsuits in my 12 years or 13 years it's been with Cordillera. I was sued for $96 million by the club when I was on the CTC board. And then we were involved in the lawsuit with the All Points North Lodge. So I have spent way too much time dealing with lawsuits. What I said in 2018 that, well, let me go back to 2013 when I was running for the CPOA board. I said my campaign slogan was, let's clear the clouds off of Cordillera. There was this sense of despair among our own residents that Cordillera was a community in decline. And then that was rekindled when the All Points North litigation started up. And my campaign slogan then was, let's talk, let's negotiate, not litigate. And so I was very much opposed to any kinds of litigation. And I do think that you have to make every effort to reach out to the other party. Find a way, find someone in your organization that can talk to him. I could talk to Noah Nordheimer, and back in the APN days, I had many conversations with him. But the idea to litigate should be absolutely last case. It really puts, even if you win, you lose. It's not good for the community.
Thank you, David. Terry, please.
Yes, as a lawyer, I've got a lot of experience with litigation, and I was actually involved in the litigation that's been referred to as the Benson litigation. And as a lawyer, I understand that litigation is a blunt instrument. Shouldn't be something you go to as the first alternative. It is, as David just mentioned, should be considered as a last alternative. There are times, however, when it is necessary. And there is a group within Cordillera that felt that the prior owner of a lodge had gravely misrepresented their intention in changing the PUD, which is essentially the zoning requirements for the area. The operator was having trouble. The boards, the CPOA, CMD apparently took pity on that operator and agreed to a revision of the zoning requirements. And they were told it's not going to be a material change. It's just going to allow us to do some little things additional, but it won't change the character, which was completely wrong, a complete misrepresentation. And the takeaways for that is it's absolutely imperative that the boards, CPOA and CMD, have the ability to review these agreements before they sign off on them. And unfortunately, the court determined that the boards had the opportunity, they could read, they agreed to what those changes were. And frankly, a first-year law student could have reviewed that PUD, in my opinion, and understood that there are issues there because of the typos. They didn't make sense. So I agree, don't involve yourself in litigation unless there is no alternative.
Thank you, Terry. Ellen, please.
Yeah, I think litigation's the last resort, but I do appreciate the background I just got on from Terry on what transpired. And I wondered if the zoning had covered it. Now I find out they got it changed a little bit and then it ended up where it is. And I can understand why the people on the divide were so upset over it. And I think the best thing, it always gets back to documents. What does it say in the documents? And so they do need to be reviewed first, not after the fact. And I think that if people have respect and try to have mutual cooperation in between the boards, we shouldn't have any litigation. I haven't been involved in any year. I'm too new, I guess, but I hope going forward, we don't have any on the horizon I don't know about. But anyway, I'm not an attorney, so my brain is not wired that way. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. David L.
I've always had the practice that litigation and lawsuits are last resort. As was mentioned earlier, the only people that ultimately win in that scenario are the lawyers. And to directly answer the question, I have never been involved in any of the lawsuits passed with Cordillera.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to the next question, please.
All right. Jane Roberts, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, my husband Dan and I have lived in Cordillera since 2006. And my question is for Brooke. Brooke, when you previously ran for the board, you indicated that you thought the Equestrian Center was profitable. Do you still think the Equestrian Center is profitable?
Thank you. Brooke, please.
I don't remember saying that it was profitable. So my apologies. I thought I said that we were breaking even. But last year apparently was a bad year. As Cheryl said at the end of one of our Zoom meetings, I tried to attend all of the CMD meetings. Her words were basically, we are not pleased with the Equestrian Center. And it turns out that the Equestrian Center ended up losing money. Many wonderful changes have been made, and we have a new manager who is also a dressage champion. That's a form of riding, for those who don't know, and she is a trainer. So I'm actually her first full-time student at the barn, and I have shared my pleasure, my contentment with her excellent teaching. I have 2 minutes. I'll go faster. I'm usually the most concise person here. The barn is starting to make money because of the lessons. Now, unfortunately, the barn did see a need due to inflation to raise the prices, not by much, about $75 a month, but we have lost 3 people and 1 other person is leaving. So far, I do believe that the lessons have offset the 4 horses that have left. I did check with Trevor the other day. The Equestrian Center is costing each property approximately $13 a month. And Jane, I'd love to introduce you or have you come down and ride one of my horses. Thank you.
It'd be fun. Thanks.
David B., please.
The Equestrian Center is, that's a tough one. You know, there's only there's 50 stalls. There's only a handful of Cordillera residents that are able to take advantage of it. But as I've said for years, it's a visual amenity to Cordillera. In the past, it's been sort of viewed, if we can keep pace with the operational costs of the equestrian center, then the other benefits of its visual amenity make it worthwhile. But there's capital costs involved that are coming up, and I think that the equestrian center is going to be in a tough place. I'm hopeful that this new program, this new director that is in place, will attract a better business model going forward. But it's a tough question.
Thank you, David. Terry, please.
You know, I agree with David. I mean, driving up into Cordillera and seeing the equestrian center, it sends the right message, the right tone. I think the community loves the equestrian center. But now that we have the ability to track expenses and also to track the capital expenditures, we'll have the ability to review it. And I think if it turns out that it's costing a lot of money, it's just a matter of, does the community want to spend the resources on the equestrian center? That'll be the issue. We'll be able to capture it. Now, hopefully the new manager will turn this thing around. I mean, it's generating, $400,000, I think, last year in revenue, but, $450 in expenses. So there is a gap. So it's just a matter of evaluating it and then presenting to the community and making a decision as to where to go with it. Is it worth it for everybody to pay an extra $100? That's the question.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Ellen, please.
I would be the first to vote. Yeah, I'd pay the extra money. I love looking at that center. I love the horses. And it's such a joy to see the elk feeding down there. I mean, I'm absolutely in love with it. And I don't think it's a lot of money. As Brooke said, $13. Even if it went to 100, I'd happily pay it. But now that we have Annie in place, we may just possibly make money this year. And there are other things that can be done, events held there, fundraisers, whatever for the center. I would hate to lose it.
Thank you.
Thank you. David L., please.
Like the rest of my candidates, I love the equestrian center. I think it's a beautiful asset to our area. And I think it's an amazing gateway up the valley there to go either to the ranch, Divide, wherever you're going. It's beautiful. I am a proponent of trying to do whatever needs to be done to keep the equestrian center. And, if we have to look at other revenue sources, whatever that may be, but whatever it is, I think that's an asset that needs to stay in the community, be with the community for long term, and nothing should change there. And whether that is, I don't know what it could be and I don't know what it envisions, but I do think no matter what happens, it needs to be part of our community.
Thank you, David. Let's go to the next question, please.
Okay, Richard Hogue, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hey, do you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. David Bentley, since you got off the board about a year ago, the CPOA and the CMD have done so many great things together. Over the past 5 or 6 years, you were always a center of controversy. I'm wanted you to convince me that you've changed your stripes. At the end of your last term, you rushed through the gatehouse without a general contractor. We've had problems of getting it done. The Foley
Richard,
issue on the water fund, you rejected a tax credit, and you got involved in the grouse negotiations when not asked for, and that proclamation caused the grouse owners to walk away.
Thank you. I'm not sure we got a question there.
The question was, will he no longer be hostile with other board members?
Thank you. David B.
Okay, well, I will make you a promise. This is a campaign promise to everybody that's listening. This is for a 4-year term that ends in May of 2027. And I have urged Trevor, and this is my campaign promise, that the gatehouse will be completed by the end of my term. I promise you that. No, that I am Richard, you and I have had plenty of conversations about the CMD and the water fund and things like that. But the fact of the matter is I'm not running to displace Cheryl. Cheryl's doing a great job. I knew she would. Richard's doing a great job. I knew he would. He's a real numbers guy. I am running for the board to bring some experience that is going to last for 4 years. Cheryl's only going to have 2 more years after this, and then she's termed out. And having a 4-year term would give me, if I were elected, and the other board member, a new person, a combination that I think would be very helpful to the board. My experience plus new ideas that comes from say an Ellen or a David or a Terry or a Brooke.
Thank you, David. Terry?
There were a lot of points in that question, and one of them was the expenditures that were made after, essentially by a lame duck board as they were walking out the door. The gatehouse is one example of that, and I'm concerned about that only because they were lame duck, meaning there were 3 members who were going to step down off the board. And the question is, was there adequate disclosure of what those expenditures were going to be? True, they were in the budget, but was the community brought into the process and told, we're going to spend $650,000 on the gatehouse? And were the community given the opportunity to say, do we really need to do that? Okay, there are things that need to be repaired in the gatehouse. Let's do that. Do we really need to spend that kind of money? That's my concern. And that is a pledge that I'm going to make, and I think all the board members should make. And that is, we need to have transparency, real transparency, meaning the community needs to know what we're spending the money on and why we're doing it. They don't necessarily have to, we don't send it all out to a vote by the community, but they need input. And that input should guide the actions of whomever is on the board. I mean, I think experience is valuable. And obviously David has a lot of experience working on the boards. But I have a lot of experience, and I look at it and I say, more important than experience oftentimes is judgment. Does it make sense? Should we do it this way? We can do it. Should we do it this way? Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Ellen, please.
I think for me, looking at what happened, and my background is project finance, I was really surprised to see a big list towards the end of the year, and this is what we're spending. And I didn't think the gatehouse, needed that dollar amount of money put into it, especially in a inflationary environment and all the other capital projects that we had to put money into, such as the Bearcat Stables that was condemned. We had to do that, and some fencing and whatnot at the equestrian center. So just sort of as a hedge, I wouldn't have gone forward on the gatehouse, but it already sounded like a fait accompli, and we were going to do it. And now it's become to me an eyesore. My God, I feel like I could have built a complete house in the amount of time they're trying to finish the gatehouse. And I'm not sure what went on there, but, or is going on there, maybe the weather. But I do think we need to be more transparent and open and have some discussion from the community on, is this how you want to spend the money?
Thank you. Before we go to David L., I'll note that there are no further hands up. And so if anybody has a question, the time to post it would be now. Otherwise, after David and Brooke have their piece, we'll go to closing comments. David L., please.
So, Richard, I apologize, but I listened very intently to what you were saying, and I actually never heard a question. All I heard was something that was directed at Mr. Bentley regarding forcing the gatehouse through. I can't comment on that. I don't know about it. I do know we're getting a new gatehouse that's not completed. And I do know that it's not, from all appearances, it's, running way lengthier than anyone could have imagined. Again, I want to emphasize the importance of, I listened, and if I missed it, I apologize. That's my bad. But I didn't see anything.
Do you want me to clarify the question for him?
I think the question has been asked, but thank you. David, are you completed with your response?
I am good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Brooke, it's your turn.
Yes. Well, I'm glad that Richard brought this up. He brought it up. Well, first of all, asking if David Bentley was changing his stripes, but that was just directed to David Bentley. For the rest of us, Richard mentioned the gatehouse, which is a very good example of a lack of democracy. I'm all for sharing with the community any thoughts of spending our money. This is our money. This money does not belong to one entity such as a board. And so we should always have surveys, explanations, be consulted. Do we think this is a worthwhile expenditure? The gate, what was that astronomical price? Beyond belief expensive for a gate. That's what most people in the United States, we live in Disney World here as far as our prices, $600,000. That's what an average house costs. So, but the point of this is we need to be more careful with each other's money and really receive permission by means of majority votes before we spend this much money. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. I'll ask Trevor to confirm that we have no hands up.
That is correct.
All right, and if there are no further questions, we'll ask the candidates to please give final statements, 1 minute each, and we'll start with Ellen, please.
Okay, my background is well suited in management and finance for being on the board, and I think it's a good skill set to have to look at all of our revenue, expenses, projects, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I retired last year after 40-something years in that business, and I have the time now to devote to CMD issues. I also, as part of my career, I've been through 5 or 6 economic downturns, and each one brings an extraordinary curveball into your projections and your expenses that you can't even anticipate what it's going to be in this instance. We had the whammy of COVID lockdowns, then inflation. Now we're going into recession. There's bank failures. And so it'll be a lot to juggle. And I had to do that before. I'm also a team player, and
Ellen, I'll ask you to please wind up. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I don't want to look in the rearview mirror and keep rehashing old problems. I'd like to go forward harmoniously with both boards and the community, working for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. David L., please.
I've lived in Colorado for 54 years. I have been in the Valley for the last 35 years. I've seen Cordillera go through tremendous thriving times, and I've seen it in its wildest despair. That we live in a beautiful area and a beautiful community. One of the things that was not hit on today by any questions was wildfires. And one of the biggest reasons I'm running for the district is I think it's imperative that we further our wildfire mitigation, come up with defensible spaces, education, evacuation plans, I lost my house in the Marshall Mesa fire. That house was in a community. There was no, sorry, I got a call there. There was no defensible space, and we lost 1,100 homes, worst fire in history.
David, I'll ask you to wind up, please.
I will tell you, as representing the Metro District, I will listen and always hear the community input, but also make the tough decisions that are fiscally responsible for our community.
Thank you. Brooke, please.
I have 3 features unique to the other candidates and the present board members. One is balanced representation. I live in the Divide. I believe I'm the only candidate or CMD board member who lives in the Divide. 2, we've mentioned the Equestrian Center. I've had my horses there for 21 years. As Jane mentioned, we do have a financial responsibility there as far as not costing our Cordillera property owners much more money than it already is, $13 a month. And I think it's important that we have a connection between the CMD and the Equestrian Center. 3, I've touched on this again. I am a successful real estate broker, have been 21 years in the Vail Valley as a broker, and we're all very interested in seeing our properties increase in value. I think my input could be very good. All right, well, thank you for your time, and I'd be honored to receive your vote, and I would work very hard for you.
Thank you. David B., please.
Well, I think I just want to make it clear about the gatehouse. I was obviously totally in jest. I have perfect trust in Trevor. I don't know what issues he ran into. What a lot of people don't understand is 70% of that gatehouse project was infrastructure that was necessary to be done. And it's one of these things, well, while you're there, well, why not make it great, look great, represent this community? We talked about a lot of things that occurred in the past, but I heard very few questions about what we plan on doing for the future. One of the things that I would like to do is to have all meetings be recorded, just like this one is. It was almost like all these old issues were like a choreographed attack on old issues rather than the future. I would like to keep pace with the reserve studies, and so I'll end it there.
Okay, thank you, David. Terry, please.
Well, I want to thank the people that have attended this and asked and raised these various different questions. I think it's been helpful. Hopefully it'll be helpful for the voters to get a feel for who the candidates are. I'm also very thankful, and I want to give a shout out to the boards, the CPOA and CMD, for what they have done, where they have brought this community. I mean, what the CPOA achieved in the athletic center, a $12 million project, bringing it in on budget, on time, is totally remarkable. What the CMD has done in tightening up its operation and moving forward with fiscal responsibility. My pledge is that's what I intend to support in any way that I can, along with transparency. And transparency means you bring people into the decision making. You still make the decisions, but you give them the necessary tools to evaluate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. As we wind up, before I hand this back to Trevor, I want to thank you for asking me to participate with you. I hope nobody thinks I was too hard on them trying to keep this train on time. Thank you.
You did a great job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, this is Bob Donovan of the CMD board. I'd like to call the meeting to a conclusion as I promised Cheryl.
Ron, thank you for taking the time. I know it's volunteer. It's not a very, it's a unique thing to come and do this for a community like this. So thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Okay, and before I ask for adjournment, I'd just like to thank all the candidates. I know that preparing for something like this and taking an hour and a half to put all your opinions and answers on the table is it's tough and it takes a lot of work. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the people that had questions. You care about our community and you basically participated in our democracy. And Ron, thank you very much. Appreciate your leading us through this. Trevor, thank you for putting it all together. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes. I motion, Gerald, Bob, that we adjourn. Any second?
Second.
I'll second.
Right.
I want what he's drinking.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all and have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.